Hello, everyone. Scott Gumbar, owner of Nwaj Tech. We are a proactive IT consulting company. We also do cybersecurity, managed compliance, and a few other things, pen testing, a few other things. So whatever your IT needs or compliance needs are, we're there to help. I wanted to talk about the FTC Safeguard Rules and why it's important to you if you are in a financial institution is the FTC's definition, and I'll get to that in a moment. So without further ado, the FTC Safeguards Rule and what you need to know. And this will kick in on June 9th this year. So you have a little less than 3 months to go. So who is covered by the Safeguard Rule? If you look at what the FTC has said, the Safeguards Rule applies to financial institutions subject to the FTC's jurisdiction and that aren't subject to enforcement authority of another regulator under Section 505 of the Gramm-Leach-Bliley Act, 15 U.S.C. 6805. According to Section 314.1b, an entity is a financial institution if it's engaged in an activity that is financial in nature or is incidental to such financial activities as described in Section 4K of the Bank Holding Company Act of 1956, and that's 12 U.S.C. 1843K. How do you know if your business is a financial institution subject to Safeguards Rule? First, consider that the rule defines financial institution in a way that's broader than how people may use the phrase in conversations. So there are businesses that fall under this rule. They may not realize that they fall under this rule. Furthermore, what matters are the types of activities your business undertakes, not how you or others categorize your business. What is considered a financial institution? It is a little gray, just a little bit. Financial institution means any institution, the business of which is engaging in an activity that is financial in nature or incidental to such financial activities as described in Section 4K of the Bank Holding Company Act of 1956, 12 U.S.C. 1843. Okay. An institution that is significantly engaged in financial activities or significantly engaged in activities incidental to such financial activities as a financial institution. Sounds kind of vague, right? Okay, well, here's a little more detail for you. Here's a list of some: auto dealerships, mortgage lenders and brokers, payday lenders, we don't like those guys, collection agencies, credit counselors, tax preparers, non-FDIC credit unions, and there are more. So who is more? Who's included on that list? So others that are covered under this rule: a retailer that extends credit by issuing its own credit card, a personal property or real estate appraiser, a career counselor that specializes in providing career counseling services to financial employees, a business that prints and sells checks for consumers, a business that regularly wires money to and from consumers, a check cashing business, an accountant or other tax preparation service, a business that operates a travel agency in connection with financial services, an entity that provides real estate settlement services, a company acting as a finder and bringing together one or more buyers and sellers of any product or service for transactions that the parties themselves negotiate and consummate. I can think of a few that do that. So it's a little broader than it might look at first, right? You maybe thought banks and financial advisors, but it's clearly, what is that, 15 or so different types of businesses, and some of those categories have several types of businesses underneath them. So if you're dealing with financials, you might want to think about doing this. You should do this anyway, but here's what the Safeguards Rule wants you to do. These are some of the things they want you to do. It's kind of a broad umbrella overview of everything you need to do. First of all, a risk assessment needs to be conducted not just once, but on a routine basis. And a risk assessment should be conducted until you determine that you are no longer at risk in most areas. And it ultimately should be conducted at least once a year, but it may need to be done more than that. And it should be done if you do find risks that need to be addressed, high critical risks, I would say. And also, if there's significant change, if you're replacing all the computers in your business, that's a significant change, and you're going to need to do another risk assessment. You should also plan to do cybersecurity and awareness training. We do this, Nwaj Tech, we partner with our clients and do training as well as send out micro trainings almost every week. They get a micro training around mostly social engineering stuff, but anything that could impact the risk of their business and their personally identifiable information that they're holding for their clients and those types of things. But cybersecurity awareness training needs to happen, and all parties need to be involved, including C-level executives, owners, presidents, things like that. I saw a statistic somewhere that said, I think it was 50% of the critical breaches occur because of a C-level executive. So often we hear that, they don't need to do it. They already know the stuff. Then why are we doing this? They need to do it too. They need to be involved. You need to create a culture. There needs to be a culture of cybersecurity awareness within your business. You should also include an incident response plan. What happens if something does happen? And by the way, this isn't just technology based. This is everything. So what happens if a hurricane is coming? What happens if the power goes out? What happens if somebody smashes in the front door and steals your computers? So these are all things that are part of incident response. What do you do? And who's in charge of that incident response? So there needs to be a designated person over all of this. Pen testing and vulnerability scanning. I can tell you from my own experience, when we do these types of things, we find things that the business is not even aware exists within the business. For example, a recent vulnerability scan on some computers, smaller business, 9 computers total in the business. 2 of the computers had a very old version of GIMP installed. GIMP is a graphic design program, sort of the free version of Photoshop, I guess you could say. And it was a very old version. It was a critical vulnerability within that program. And the business was not even aware that this was installed on any of their computers. And that's just one of numerous examples when we do these pen testing and vulnerability scans of the things that are exposed. Another example would be another business where their router, internet-facing router, was exposed to the internet. The previous IT provider left the web GUI open and available with not that strong of a password at that. And when we looked at the logs, you could see hundreds of attempted logins from all over the world in a very short period of time, within a day. So these are some of the things we look for when we're doing pen testing, vulnerability scans, and often the business is not aware that the problem exists within the business. And then safeguards to control risks. So what are we doing within the business? And this is mostly technology now, but not 100%. What are we doing within the business to protect the controls of the business? So not the controls, but the access to personally identifiable information, PII. This is ultimately why the FTC Safeguard Rule is coming out, or it was extended to June 9th, so it will be soon. But this is ultimately what they're trying to accomplish, is protection of personally identifiable information, client information, sensitive information like social security cards, driver's license numbers, not social security cards, social security information, driver's license information, picture IDs, birthdays, stuff like that. What are we trying to do? What are we doing to protect this? And so reviewing and updating access controls. Who has access to what? Do they need access to it? If they don't, are we taking access away? Are we eliminating ex-employees, employees that are terminated, employees that move to a different department, employees that transfer to another location? What are we doing to protect those controls, and who's reviewing it and making sure that that happens? Locating sensitive data and keeping track of where it's stored and who has access to it. So another example is I went into a business that had iPads that the salespeople used, and one of those iPads had an image of somebody's driver's license on it. This is sensitive information, and it was exposed potentially to all of anybody that would enter this business, because the iPad is typically on the floor It's used as a sales tool, but anybody could access it it had a password, but it was very easily guessed password. So it can't be stored there. Wherever it's stored should be encrypted and limit who has access to it. So if you're storing scanned files or applications, credit applications, things like that, then that needs to be stored somewhere where it's secured, not just technologically, but also with a locking key, and encrypted on the computer, and limit who has access to it. Encrypting customer information at rest and in transit, we talked about this, and we do have a service that will take care of all of that for you. Implementing multi-factor authentication. If you've watched any of my previous videos, I'm not going to beat this to death. We already know this needs to be in place. This is not rocket science at this point. But also with that comes complex passwords. So I've entered multiple businesses this year to do a review, and they had, in some cases, all computers had no password, but in most cases, more than half of the computers did not have a password. And this is a big risk. Some of those computers were customer facing. So the customer enters the business, they stop at the front desk, and there's a computer there, and the computer is unlocked and it has no password on it. So even if it is locked, there's still no password on it. So it could easily get onto that computer and do some damage, steal some information. I was in a dentist's office yesterday, not for myself. I was there with someone else, and the computer, they sit you right down next to the computer. I was able to potentially, I did not do this, but I was able to manipulate this computer, plug in a thumb drive, and steal all the data. Nobody would have noticed. There were no cameras in the room. Nobody would have noticed that I did this because of where the computer was located, next to where I was sitting, but also not in a highly visible area. It's very dangerous, and it's not easy. It's not hard to plug in a thumb drive and then have remote access to this computer. Securely disposing of customer data every 2 years. And by securely, we meaning shred it if it's paper. If it's not paper, then using different levels of deletion or storage that wouldn't expose it to everybody else. Enforcing change management and keeping logs of user activity. Again, going back to the example, if we're replacing all the computers in a business, that's change management. We need to update records. We need to do another risk assessment. We need to keep a record of the change. If you're changing line of business software, same thing. All of these things need to be tracked. Not just for this purpose, not just for the FTC Safeguard Rule, but also for your own record keeping. If something fails, you have to have a way to go back and fix that failure. Monitoring and testing the effectiveness of your security controls. So this is kind of where pen testing comes in. Vulnerability scans come in. All of these things take place to make sure that the controls you put in place are effective and working as they should work. Now, this is not a complete list of everything you need to do. There is more things. This is a high-level overview. And if you're not doing this, this is the bare minimum. If you're not doing this, you're failing. And the FTC is already proven that they will come after businesses for big money. Just look at the news. Search FTC on Google, and you will see all of the things that they're doing right now to enforce their rules as they push them out. So they've gone after healthcare. You already have the OCR. Now you have to worry about the FTC. They've gone after other businesses that were negligent in protecting customer information already, and the fines are huge. I'm talking in some cases millions of dollars. So this is not something to take lightly. This is not something that they'll wait until you're breached and then come in and investigate. That's your insurance company's job, and your insurance company will not pay if you're not doing these very same things. They will say you did not do the bare minimum to protect your business data, and we're not paying out. They can come at any time and say you're not doing what you need to do to protect personally identifiable information. And I'm in total honesty, let's leave the FTC out of it. Let's leave the OCR out of it. Let's leave everybody out of this. If you're not doing what you need to do to protect your client's information, then are you really providing the best customer service that you can? I think you know the answer to that. So hopefully this helps some of you businesses out there that are going to fall under this FTC safeguard rule, and ultimately, hopefully, it helps any business that has client data that they need to protect. Until next time, stay secure.